Welcome to The Rebound, your podcast for everything UHLA, with your hosts, Chaotic and Cubics.
Everyone, welcome to The Rebound. In this special episode, me and my co-host Cubics will go over our top 10 prospects for the upcoming draft. How are you, Cube?
I'm good, thank you.
That's good. Without any further ado, let's get into our rankings. Number 10, I have DeAndre Fries. The reason I have him is because, there are three forwards who are deep range facilitator who all have the same potential. And one of them is staying in the rookie league, or whatever we're going to call it, for another season. And the other one, who's Relic, who will appear later on this list, has better playmaking ability, so I put him higher. But the reason DeAndre Fries is number 10 is because he is a forward, and there's not a lot of forwards that are on par with, like, the other forwards. DeAndre is up there, but that's where I got him. You want to go over your number 10?
Sure, I'll go over to mine. With my list, it's a little bit more surprising. I only have one forward on the entire list, and I did mine more based on just like how good the players were overall and not necessarily in their position. So this will be an interesting little back and forth. So at my number 10, I have Dwayne Neal, actually. He's got a pretty solid O game paired with a mediocre D game, but he's a good secondary passer and rebounder. But his main problem there is he is an inactive owner, so he won't grow as much as some of the other guys. But he is still a very solid player and would be a good addition to any team that could get him.
Yeah. My number 9 is point guard AJ Asher.
That's who I got too, actually.
The reason I have him is mainly because of his skill. He is one of the most skilled guards in the league, but the thing about that is his potential as an all-star potential, which is good, but like it's not as good as it could be. That's the only reason he's 8th overall, but I could totally see him going higher. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I have Asher there too, and for me, this was more just because he's just basically Dwayne Neal, but a little bit better on offense, and with a, I believe, active owner as well, so he'll have some room to grow.
Yeah, he does, yeah.
And he does have slightly worse passing and rebounding, but definitely makes up for it in steals to kind of complete that more defensive end. Yeah. And I think that's really what cements him as a solid top prospect.
My number 8 is Relic. Now, I said he'd be on this list, and here he is. The reason he's on this list is because he is a pretty good playmaker, but as a forward, I don't think you really need to be a playmaker. He also has better playmaking and I think better shooting than DeAndre, so that's why I put him higher.
Yeah, I think that is actually I think he is a pretty solid pick, and he definitely is one of the top forwards in the draft, and I kind of didn't take positions into consideration when I was doing this, as I think we have the same top forward on this list later on, but in terms of like playmaking ability, he is one of the better ones on the list. For me, my number 8 is Big Mac, a good center with a high shooting ability on the inside, probably one of the more underrated shooters. And he has a great D game on the other side as well, and is just a really well put together player. He doesn't have any 3 ability though, and he has an awful amount of turnovers, averaging almost 2.5 a game in the rookie league. So he's a huge liability for possessions. That's why I have him so low compared to some of the other people on this list.
I know a lot of the big picks are going to be centers because centers were the most dominant people in this league, but the thing about that is it's the rookie league. The easiest shots to get off are the ones that are near the rim, and the centers are near the rim. That's why people like Benos and Bernie did good, but not saying they don't deserve the credit that they get, but that's the reason they're more dominant than every other player. My number 7 is Pop Wu. Now, normally he would be higher for me, but I was trying to think of it from everybody else's perspective. If it was my perspective, he would probably be number 1 overall because he's probably the best pick in the draft for guards, and he's just really good overall. He's got a solid D game, but the reason I put him so low at 7 is because he still needs a little bit of time to progress. He hasn't been able to really wow in the scoring department. He's been okay in the playmaking and okay in the on the defensive side of things, but I don't know how well he's going to do as soon as he gets drafted, but I feel like once he reaches his full potential, he'll be really unstoppable.
Yeah, that is probably one of the more interesting picks to me so far, because if you're just looking at his stats, he's got a field goal percentage below 40. He was only averaging 7 points a game, but he did have 4 assists on the other hand and a steal and a half per game as well, but also didn't have fantastic blocking. So I think you're right about his potential to grow and his potential, and that is there, but I don't think right now he would make my top 10 or probably even top 15 if I'm going to be real.
Really?
For me at 7, though, I have, pandering a little bit to myself here, Christian Hart. He's got by far the best defensive game in this league and has a pretty decent offense to boot here. He is another center, which is a little bit of a problem, and people tend to underrate the defensive side of the game, but he was the defensive player of the year last year and is not a great scorer, but he had, I believe, just over 50% shooting percentage and can give you a solid 8 to 10 points a game-ish. He's not a shooter, but that's not really his role on whatever team he ends up on, but he can be relied upon to snag those few points a game for his team. And I think he's a really solid all-around player in that regard. Definitely more on the defensive end, though.
That's a good pick. He's higher for me. My number 6 is Gavin somebody. Now, he's the last forward on my list, but he is the best. And given some time to grow, he will be really good. And he's got a great shooting game, very good defensive game. He played on a team where he played with Christian Hart, so they were the best defensive duo in that league, hands down. Now, when I did simulate the league, he usually got steals leader, and I was surprised when he didn't. Who got steals leader? I think it was
steals leader. I believe was Hart actually.
Christian Hart. I think it was Christian Hart actually.
Yeah, Hart had 2.8 steals per game.
Yeah, I think it was him. Yeah, he's just a really solid defensive player and a really solid shooter. So that's why I have him at number 6.
I think I underrated him. He probably should be about 9 or 8 on my list for sure. Just looking back on it, because he's averaging almost 20 points a game, 55% shooting percentage, as well as really 2.1 steals per game and 2.3 blocks. Only problem with him is 2.1 turnovers per game. Not the greatest there, a little bit of a liability in terms of possession, but definitely a very solid pick. For my number 6, I have Reggie Klops. A little bit of a shot in the dark here. He had almost a 65% shooting percentage and had 1.4 steals and 1.6 blocks a game with 7.1 rebounds as well. So he's not a 3 shooter, but he is super consistent from 3 and was averaging above 20 points a game. Almost 65% shooting, just a fantastic player, great two-way game, and I think that's what puts him above Hart here, is his more elite scoring ability. Hart was averaging about 8 points per game, not really his role, but Reggie Klops averaging almost 22, and probably one of the top defensemen in the class as well, I think is what puts him above Hart in this case, and that's kind of why I have Hart so low. Is because there's a couple of guys who I think have more of a two-way game than Hart does.
Okay, number 5. Now, this one is probably, I think, is going to be the highest. Okay, maybe the other point guard, but this guard is Antonio Rondow. I think either he's going to be the top pick guard or my other guard pick. But right now, Rondow, very good guard. He's got a lot of potential. I think he definitely will be – he'll be a really good guard in the league, in the pro league. I can tell you that much because I got a lot of confidence in him. I think he's going to do really good. He did get a skill boost from that loyalty bonus thing, and he spent it all on shooting and then 1 on dribbling. So he now has maxed out his shooting. So I would be a little worried if I was not. He could go number 1 depending on the team.
Depending on if people listen to this podcast too. That is a good point. That is a good point. I forgot that he did boost his shooting up quite a bit. He, based on his stats from the last season, I had him at number 11, actually, on my list. But I think with that boost, he's probably a top 5 for sure now, just seeing like how good his shooting was and how good it's going to be with the boost. For me, though, at number 5, I actually have Bamelo Falls. He has said that he is intending to stay down another year to play with his brother, but he, to me, is probably the 3rd or 4th best in this group, but he's got such a promising O and D game and is just a great all-around player. Turnovers are a little bit of a red flag, though. And the fact that he's not going to be a major player next season is a little bit of a turnoff, but I could still see him being a first-round pick and still getting to play with his brother for a year. But it'd definitely be more of a future investment, which I think would be something that one of the teams at the end of the first round, like a 5th or 6th draft pick, might actually be looking for. Is a couple of years down the line, you'll get a really solid player, especially because he's going to be playing down. He's going to have another year of development, possibly another potential boost because of that, and we could see him be a superstar, but that would have to be in 3 or 4 seasons as opposed to the short-term future, which is why I don't have him higher on the list.
I didn't have LaMelo on my list because I thought, well, the first reason was because he said he didn't want to play in the Pro League. But I completely forgot about that he could still get drafted but still play in the Rookie League. And I just remembered that, and I was going to put him on my list. But then I was like, I already have enough centers. If realistically, I think he would be a lot higher. I think, like you said, the only downside to him was the turnovers and the where he wants to play next season. My number 4 is Christian Hart. Christian Hart he won Defensive Player of the Year. So either way, whatever team he goes on, he's going to make an immediate impact on the defensive side. He's got okay rebounding, and his shooting has a lot of potential. But honestly, scoring right now is a question mark. I need to see more. I need to see him develop a little bit more. But defense alone, I think, is enough to get him to the number 4th overall pick. If I had the 4th overall pick, I would pick him. That's why I put him on my list. But
yeah, I mean, we went over him a bit before, and we've seen that he's just fantastic on the defensive end. So, yeah, at my number 4, I actually have Brian Payne. He's a very solid offensive threat with an above 60 shooting percentage in both 2s and 3s. He's a great perimeter defender, but in comparison to my next guy, he doesn't have the rest of the defense covered in quite the same way. So the next guy on my list has a much better defensive game and fits into a specific role on the team better than Payne would at the moment. So that's why I have him a little bit lower, but he's still one of the better players in this draft, and I could totally see him going top 5.
Number 3 is Lance Robinson. He is easily the best. Well, he's a really good point guard for the reason that he has a good amount of potential, but also has a good amount of skill. He's the right mix of that amount. He's got great shooting, great playmaking. He's got pretty good defense. I mean, it's not amazing. It's not anything that'll blow you away, but it gets the job done. He is, in my opinion, the best guard in this draft for anybody who wants to win right now, but also, save some skill for the future.
Yeah, that's who I have at number 3 too, actually. As you said, he's got like a great point guard passing ability, good dribbling and good passing on that end, and is able to just create chances out of thin air seemingly. And I think he is by far the best guard in the draft, and hence why I have him over Payne, because he's definitely that point guard specialist. But for a team who needs that point guard specialist, he's he's definitely the best point guard in the draft.
Yeah.
I'm going to assume that we have the same top 2. Which would be Sorbinos and Bernie Sanders, right? Those have to be our top 2. So who do you have?
Where's Beano's at for you? Where's Beano's at for you?
I have Beano's at number 1, and here's why.
Yeah, same.
I have Beano's up here because he was second in scoring to Sanders, and he's got a little bit more defensive stats than Sanders does, and he also has the 3 ability that Sanders doesn't have, and he's just a more versatile scorer and a more versatile defenseman. And I think that's really what propels him to the top spot. It also depends on what positions that top team would be looking for. I could see, like, if they are in need of a point guard, the first overall team might actually go with Lance Robinson over a guy like Sorbinos, who's just fantastic at scoring. But if they already have a good center, like if, say, for example, the San Francisco Rush, my team, we already have Jeff Kirby at center, who's doing very well. And I think a team like, was it Washington? Or whoever has Aaron Burke was the first overall pick in the fantasy draft, 3.25 rated. They won't need a Sorbinos or a Bernie Sanders on their team. They would probably want a guy more like Lance Robinson or Brian Payne to fill that gap that they have over someone like Beano's. But that being said, let's talk a little bit about Bernie Sanders now. It's very close between these two. It's really a toss-up in what you like more in their game. even though he is a better scorer, like I said, he does lack a little bit in the D department, and his 3-game is literally non-existent, but he is a little bit better on the rebounding side, and that could be what the drafting team would look for. And it might also be a potential thing between these two as well. I don't know as much about that. What do you know about their potentials?
Their potentials are both superstar, and they're literally both the same. They both have a 5-star potential. Originally, Benos had a 4-star potential, but he did win MVP, and hopefully this video comes out after the championship because his team won. Spoiler alert, if you haven't nobody watched it yet except for me. But his team did win the championship, so he has a 5-star potential now. Everybody on that team gets a potential boost, so that's why I put Lance Robinson so high up, is because he also got the potential boost from that. Yeah, Bernie and Benos have the same potential, and it could really go either way for them. Bernie is, if you want more of a scorer, because he has the best finishing in the rookie league. Like, statistically, he does. Attribute-wise, he has a 9 out of 10. And, yeah, he's the better scoring option. But I do think Benos will go ahead, because, like you said, because of the defensive side of things, I do think he will be first overall. Well, that wraps things up for today. Big thanks to Cube for co-hosting and editing this podcast. When Season 2 starts, look out for a new episode every Monday.